Constitutional Convention? If so, what would you change?
An unlimited Constitutional Convention. So we get to rewrite the whole thing? Sure, why not? The short answer to that is that people like to address these problems as if it was geometry. If only we were smart enough to figure out the answer and embed it in the document, we would be fine. I have no strong feelings about a Constitutional Convention one way or another, but I do think that it's a mistake to delude yourself into thinking that if only we had the right document, you know. It's almost as if everybody wants to be an architect, nobody wants to be a plumber. Our real problem is that it's leaking. The pipes are leaking. Things are falling apart. That's the problem. We don't need new architecture. We need plumbers and carpenters and people who get in and get this work done and get it done in a workmanlike way.
How should Philadelphia solve its budget crisis? Is Mayor Nutter taking the right approach?
Well, as long as I'm presuming to give everybody advice. I think the problem, short answer is I think the mayor should redefine the mission of the city. The municipalities in Pennsylvania do not have the capacity to be the providers of social welfare. Now, that may sound terribly harsh, but because I am really very much a liberal when it comes to the role of government as a provider of economic security, a provider of economic opportunity. I'm absolutely liberal on that. But is a municipality the right vehicle to do that? The answer is no. No city can afford to be the provider of a broad mission. And it is quite attractive, especially given the constituency in cities, to commit yourself to a broad kind of agenda of social welfare. It can't be done. So my advice to Mayor Nutter would be, first of all, narrow the mission. Be real clear about what the mission of a city is. It is more humble than one would be inclined to do. Second thing is that, and I think President-elect Obama has really made this clear, you've got to do fact-based decision-making, not ideological decision-making, and not decision-making that's driven by whether you can get positive press. I think that is a terrible mistake. And third, I think you ask very straightforward but easy questions, prominent among which is, does it work? Does it work? If it doesn't work, don't do it. So the notion of a 311 system, 311, I mean, boggles the mind. I mean, we're going to have people are going to call in to an operator who's going to say, okay, a pothole, all right, I'll refer that to the streets department, and then the streets department does or doesn't do it, and that person calls you. You've introduced another layer. It just, I can't conceive of it working. I'm happy to be surprised, right? But the schools don't work, and the various ideas that people come up with, they're obviously not going to work. So in some ways it's abrasive and perhaps even offensive to ask that question, but I think that's the question Michael Nutter should be asking about everything. Does it work?
Is Governor Rendell's bailout of Boscov's an appropriate function of state government?
No. Now, I don't know the details of the Boscov deal, but I have been present or been able to observe a lot of these deals. I mean, look, well, let me ask this. I'll ask this of the audience. Does it work? Does it work? Is this a good investment of taxpayer dollars or not? Forget about how many of you are related to the Boscovs, okay? Or how many of you already written about it and said, gee, it's a great idea or a terrible idea. Please raise your hand if you think this will work. Let the record reflect that there are no hands. Well, then you say to yourself, are all of us smarter than the people making these decisions? Probably not. Well, then what's going on? What's going on is a reversion to the spoils system. It's a question of who can grab what. Please do not, I've now moved out of the Boskov context, please. This is not about Boskov. But take a look at Citibank. Citibank, have you seen today's paper? Citibank is going to get bailed out. If you read yesterday's New York Times, in there it was revealed that the control mechanism, the risk management section of Citibank was essentially not diluted. They were pals with the go-go guys whose rewards were determined by the short-term benefits of doing deals which violated standards of risk management. And they made millions and millions and millions on deals that were defective. Why? Because it was good for the country? Because it was good for Citibank? Because it was good for them. And it's about whacking up the pie. Every time you see a legislator, and it's not as if I haven't been there with a big check myself. I understand that. But understand that I came from an era before there was WAMs, which are the state earmark system. All right, I was in the legislature before there were WAMs. And now it is a spoil system. And every time you write about, with approval, that somebody's bringing home the bacon, every time you put on the front page somebody with the check, understand that what you're doing here is whacking up the pie. So the notion, and the amazing thing is that you can see in the same newspaper an editorial deploring pork and featuring somebody who brought home the bacon. I mean, it's astounding to me. So for me, I don't have any strong feelings about this. I'm not an investor. But having said that, if it doesn't work, please don't do it. Let's not justify it just because you're whacking up a pie.
If you were the editor of a newspaper, what charge would you give to your reporters?
Go online.